We're live. Hello and good morning or good evening to all of you, depending on the part of the world that you are in at the moment. Welcome to another episode of Rethinking Legal Ops, where we have forward-thinking conversations about the many ways that legal tech is transforming the way we perceive and practice law. My name is Aishwarya, the head of legal at Speed Legal, and I'll be your host, as always. And today we have an amazing guest with us, Tara. Tara has extensive experience as in-house and currently works in her own legal consultancy firm. And she is also a fellow legal tech enthusiast. And it's wonderful to have you here, Tara, and very inspiring to see all your enthusiasm for making legal work more efficient.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having me.
Great. And this podcast is sponsored by Speed Legal and Sweet Legal Tech. Check out all their interesting work on legal tech as well and the digital transformation of law. So, just to get us started, Tara, tell us a little bit about your story, about your professional and academic journey so far.
Yeah, sure. After I graduated from law school, just make it brief, I didn't work for a law firm. I've always worked for corporations, some privately held, some public, large, small, etc. So I wasn't accustomed to the billable hours, but I think that it made a difference understanding what the operations and business was trying to move forward, since I'd always really been in that role. So I've been chief legal officer and chief compliance officer together, or splitting those duties with many other departments reporting under me.
Great. Very interesting background and very, very applicable to our main theme for today, where we're talking about contracts and how to manage them, and why the way we're currently looking and managing our contracts in businesses or in law firms is just not the most ideal. So, Tara, what do you think? Tell us a little bit about how you see the way businesses look and process their contracts at the moment, and what do you think is wrong with that?
Yeah, I've seen various ways, but primarily, um, there hasn't been a lot of legal technology for the contract. I would call it the contract management system, and even part of vendor management. So, I liken it to going on a wild goose chase, trying to find some contract that maybe was signed 5 years ago, but it's still applicable, it's still in effect, and just not having a very organized contract management system, ways to find them, ways to pull up the contract to see how, when they renew and those sort of things. And so I'm so excited about the tech, coming along and being able to do it in that fashion, because I've had to go through the other way, even in large litigations and discovery, or, enforcement actions with the CFPB, and to have your things organized and easily found in a solution would be far better.
Absolutely, yeah. And you mentioned contract management systems. Tara, can you tell us a little bit about what exactly contract management is and what does it entail for businesses?
Yeah, so, a contract management system is a little bit about, kind of, as it said, the contract management. But, looking at it from working with the business, I kind of try to start with from the time you have an NDA, right? So, you sign the NDA, and that's when you start your relationship with a party, and having all those documents that go with that particular service provider or agreement that you have in one place that you can find them. And then, managing your contract, in a system, again, where you can identify the terms. So many times, I have been in a situation where a contract has auto renewed, and we're talking $5 million contract, nothing small, but no one was really monitoring it or knew about it. And in the past, they would have, say, the SME that would supposedly, was managing their own contract, but that's a lot for people to keep up with. So I guess the simplest way to say is that a contract management system is ideally, a system where you can pull your documents, that you can pull the the most applicable portions of the documents, and you have a dashboard almost where you can look up and say, oh, this one's expiring such and such time. But that's how I think about it.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's just such a helpful thing for businesses, especially like small to medium-sized entities, as you're saying, and just businesses that also don't have a sizable legal in-house department on their own. That can make, I'm assuming, make a huge difference for them. Can you tell us a little bit about just what a good contract management system can do for businesses, and what kind of a difference can it make for them overall?
Yeah, sure. I think a contract management system has can provide many positive, effects for a business. One is the legal compliance side, right? So I'll talk to that first because that's just my area. But to ensure that you're compliant with your agreements, that you're abiding by the terms of agreement. You even small businesses could have an agreement where they're required to provide reports or spreadsheets monthly. And if you don't have an easy way to look those up, you could miss that, and technically you would be in breach. So, there's that piece of it. And then, I look at the other side of, from your accounting or looking at your ledger and those sort of things. So, being able to go through and see where you're spending money. This would all, when I worked, the CEO would always want to know, I want to see our contract management system. I want to see the top 10 that we're paying. And maybe you want to go out to an RFP. So it's a way to manage the business as well from an operational and financial, background. And then lastly, I go back to legal and compliance. But as in the U.S., we are certainly in uncertain terms with respect to regulatory bodies and the CFPB and other ones. And so having your things together when they come on board, or even just a small class action or a small litigation, et cetera, if you can get those documents timely, it saves money and it saves time for your employees that are, having to pull all these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it can also, from what you're saying, it can also make a huge difference just for business strategies, the way that it wants to position itself and the way it wants to, go ahead and make their decisions. Can you tell us a little bit about and on that aspect as well, as to how a good CMS system can help make the right decisions, also beyond, complying with all the regulatory requirements? How is it useful for business strategy?
Yeah, I think that the best way for me to describe is to give us some examples, if that's okay. Just some real world examples. So, I was in my prior life, I was with a corporation, and we had an insurance provider that would provide insurance. And I don't mean healthcare insurance. I'm speaking to insurance for our customers. And we were spending $40 million a year. And the business was like, I don't think that we're making money on this. I don't know what's going on. And I literally pulled that agreement, and this is true story. It was signed in 1996. No updates. No one was monitoring it. And of course it wasn't making any money because, we had no terms and conditions, so that's one simple example, but it made a huge impact on the company because the company went out to the RFP. We, found another vendor that was significantly less expensive, and it increased, our profitability year over year. That's certainly one example. And then, I think another good example is when you're going through, let's say you're a small company, but you want to merge or purchase other small companies. If you're not aware of the contracts that you have in place and your liabilities and what you owe to folks, it's very difficult to sell or be sold. And so again, I've been in a situation prior to legal ops being more technical and things where, my paralegal and I pulled 350 contracts for one small acquisition. And that's certainly, strategically not how you would want your legal department to be spending their time. I hope that's some good kind of real world examples.
Absolutely, very hopeful example, especially when you say that the contract was signed like back in 1996 and like just got lost in the mailroom. No one ever looked at it, and that is, unfortunate. That is so common, for businesses, for large companies, especially. Like these sort of contracts just get so lost, and no one really has any sort of visibility. Which brings me to like the point about how even legal work, it has become so data driven now. There's we used to joke in law school that I became a lawyer because I cannot do math and I don't do numbers, but that is becoming more and more important in legal practice. Have you seen some of that in your own work at TJ44 Consulting? Are you seeing that your clients are maybe wanting to hear more sort of data driven solutions rather than just like the like legal advice, like the traditional legal advice that practitioners earlier used to give?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been this turn, which I think it's a good, shift in the legal world of, that we're a business partner and a strategic business partner and not just seen always as a cost center. But with that comes that, to even show your budget or to comply with your budget as your legal department, you have to be able to have the software and the systems to help you gather that, and the dashboards and the metrics. So one example is just to justify a small example, but justifying, hey, I need another lawyer on my team. Okay, well, here's how I justified it. I showed all the outside counsel fees I was spending and the cost per hour. And if I had hired, a junior attorney that was perfectly capable, would save us $300,000 a year. And I hear that over and over. And I go back a little bit to the regulatory just because it's a very deep part of my background. But the regulators in all businesses, essentially, they want to see that you're monitoring your data and your complaints, your legal complaints, even your external auditors when they come in and audit. They want to see not only are you monitoring it, that you're remediating it. And I think that that's the step that some people miss so often is that, I used to say to my team, I don't care if we had 25 failing audits. I want to know why and how we're going to fix them. And technology has brought us to where we can do that so much more efficiently. And, and also we can see red flags before they occur. You can begin to see trends and other things that show you, what is happening. And I think that's some of the thought. But, just back to the contract piece, you were mentioning that it happens so often that contracts get lost, but I think everyone who's worked in a business, you set forth an executive and you say, okay, you're responsible for our telephone contract. Well, people forget that, oh, I didn't send it to legal and I don't know where it is and I don't know what we're supposed to do to comply. But when you get a good compliance management system, all of that comes through that system. It's truly invaluable.
Mhm. Yes, and when you said when you said that your attitude was more towards I want to know why it's happening and how can we fix it, that really resonated with me because just growing up watching movies and just the depiction of lawyers in pop culture was always more about those people that always tell you no, like you can't do this or you can't do that, things like that. And I'm loving the fact that now it's there's like this paradigm shift within the culture itself and the perception of lawyers where they're being looked upon as solutions architects. People that are looking at all this data, looking at the metrics, analyzing these trends, and then crafting solutions that can be very, very important for businesses and acting more like a business partner or an ally, like exactly like you were saying. I want to get more of your perspective, Tara, about just how overworked and overburdened on average can in-house legal departments get in an enterprise level company. So that's one view, and then the second view would be about SMEs. So just like both perspectives.
Yeah. So your first question was about how overworked you can become, or yeah. So yeah, I can talk about it. I was at a $1 billion publicly traded company for a time. And we had 6,000 employees in the US and 1,700 in Mexico, just to give you an idea, right? The legal department consisted of me and a paralegal. We were highly regulated by every state because we were making loans, highly regulated by the the federal regulatory bodies. And similarly, this is right when the CFPB came along. And I'm going to age myself a little here, but I didn't have software solutions or systems. And if I did, I think something else that's important, so many of the documents that I needed were found in different solutions and in different areas, and trying to pull them together. So, the department was moving along okay. And then we received an enforcement action from the CFPB. And I was asked, obviously, to respond and handle that case. We sent over 10 million documents to the CFPB. None of them were in software systems or solutions. So, the burden that fell, on a very small team. Of course, we had compliance and, some folks helping us, was unbelievable. But as I work now with clients and as my career progressed, the more technology and use that we could use, and have on our side, was certainly made, any of those things easier. Discovery, being a good business partner. To your one point, I just want to go back a second, that so many times, I actually was in a legal magazine maybe about 8 years ago saying, I'm not the office of no, I'm the office of how can we do this together. But I felt like that lawyers, in-house lawyers, were behind the 8 ball a little bit, because we didn't have data and metrics. So I would always say to my CEO, I can't prove the negative. I remember saying that over and over. How am I supposed to show you that I'm saving money because you're not getting sued all the time? But now we have much more resources to do those things. So I hope that's some good examples, but the amount of money and time that we spent on that one enforcement action was, I would say, probably $200 million, honestly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is huge. yeah, I need to take a breath after this. Like, it's crazy.
Well, and I think the other business areas, it's always, well, this business area needs an analyst, and they need software solutions, and all the different departments have those, but people didn't think until more recently, this paradigm shift, that so does the legal department. We need those tools to help you and be a strategic partner with you.
Absolutely, to be a strategic partner with you. And I think for that, it's also important to equip them with the right tools, so they're putting their energy in the right places. Like putting together 10 million documents, I cannot even imagine how many hours went into that, and how many late nights and just sleepless nights went into all of that, and just so unnecessarily cumbersome, because now we, of course, I don't know when this was, but now we of course have technology to automate so much of that. Now it's so much easier to just pull those documents from a centralized system, and just make people's lives easier, so they could focus on like the more creative work, and add even more value. So totally resonate with that. And with regard to small businesses, Tara, what is the in-house experience in those, like with regards to compliance and just dealing with the day-to-day? Because a few weeks ago we had a GC from a fintech company called Paybird, and he was talking about how GCs at smaller companies have to sort of have this 360 view of all different types of laws. Like in the morning you're dealing with employment contracts, then you're dealing with something compliance related, then suddenly in the afternoon you're dealing with IP, and then you're dealing with data privacy. So you're dealing with different types of laws. So I want to get a little bit your perspective about where you think technology can be an ally for them, and just overall what the perspective of small SME GCs could be on this.
So you're speaking with technology in smaller companies. Is that what you? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So many smaller companies obviously cannot. They don't have it in their budget to have a chief compliance officer and a chief legal officer and a team of compliance professionals and those sort of things. And so I believe, and again, so excited that we have this kind of technology, because it doesn't mean that you still do not need a person that, that has some, that can go and look at things. But when you have systems that you can put in place, for example, your compliance management system, well, then a smaller company will know that, their contracts are in one place. They know where to look them up. They can manage it better. Other systems could be your entire compliance management system and things. The more data and metrics that you can have helps smaller businesses be able to do those things and be compliant with the laws and manage their business without having a staff of 20 lawyers and then go to outside counsel as needed, but to have those software and solutions makes an incredible difference.
Mm-hmm. And there's this question that I commonly hear people asking that, sure, I can have a legal tech tool to help me out and to maybe centralize all my contracts, or even to maybe help me analyze them a little bit, but I still trust my own eyes, and I'm still going to go and manually verify everything. So what is really the value in that sort of tech tool? What do you think about those sort of things, and what's your views on things like that?
It's funny that you said that, because as much as I have really turned the corner and I love technology, and I was one of those, I want my paper, I want everything in paper, I want to write on the paper, it's my generation, and so I say that if you still want to check everything, that's fine, but there's nothing that can compare with having something in a system, perhaps with AI technology and things that can assist you, right? And so I get it. I get wanting to look at the document yourself and check things and write it on paper, but the benefit of having a system that also backs you up, right? It's just almost like another check, another checkpoint. I think it's invaluable, but I do understand the resistance. As my career moved forward, it's like you said, lawyers go to, we would say, well, we went to school because I can't do math, or those sort of things, and the more that I felt like, oh my God, they're forcing me to learn this system and that system. And, but I'm so glad they did, because the value that I found in it was immeasurable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not everything needs to be done manually, and exactly like you're saying. If you want to do it, go ahead, do you. But there's that extra added layer of check, which doesn't hurt, only adds value. Which brings me to my next question, which is more about just day to day business deals and transactions, and also, empowering businesses with the relevant data insights that they need to maybe efficiently or profitably negotiate a deal. Where do you think contract management tools in particular fit into helping facilitate negotiations and make them close faster?
Yeah, I'm sure the process of negotiation. Like I said, you always usually start with an NDA. Hopefully, your legal department helps you and assists you with that, and then you go to the next step of the agreement, and what I would always call the battle of the forms. Right. So again, I'll go back to my prehistoric life, because I'm way older than you, and talk about where the emails were going back and forth, and you had red, blue, pink, orange. You couldn't keep up with who wrote what, the red lines and those sort of things. So having a good compliance management system that also, as you're negotiating, helps you keep version control, that's a huge thing as well. And going back and forth and getting, to the point where everybody's comfortable with the version you're on and the final version.
Mm-hmm. And that's very interesting that you bring up version control, because one thing I've commonly seen, and people complain about at law firms, or just that in in-house, is just how many versions of the same document can exist, and just how many red lines, and how difficult and confusing and frustrating that can become to just manage over time. What sort of technologies that exist today, the tools that exist today, do you think can particularly help with those sort of, making those sorts of workflows efficient, like helping people collaborate on documents? Are you aware of tools? Are you using something like that in your current practice?
Yeah, well, there are some tools that have been helpful for me. For example, I would call it document change control or document management control. And there are various different systems that can help you do that. Right now, SharePoint was one example that I used, right? So everyone at a certain level that would have access to change and edit agreements would all have this SharePoint site. And then you could see who made the version, and this is just internally. So that was really one helpful tool. That's been a few years ago, but that was so helpful because it's certainly not efficient to everyone get on a group call again to talk about what we think about the contract internally, and then everyone's like on a different version, and it happens all the time. Someone's like, well, I don't have that. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So that's when I set up the SharePoint. So everyone's talking, on the same page, right? And we're all talking from the same document. And what's even more embarrassing is when you send back the wrong version to your potential vendor or service provider, and they come and say, hey, Tara, this is like 3 versions ago. Oh God, so SharePoint or any system that helps people share, and keep version control was helpful. And yet again, I think about, the contract management, having those things there is also very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's great you brought up vendors, because I was going to ask my question about them next. Do you think that, how do you see contract management tools helping businesses interact with their vendors? Because there's just a ton of vendor contracts that, they have to handle on a day-to-day basis. And then, negotiations back and forth, which can, of course, like different versions can become very, very unwieldy. How do you see the interaction or the relationship businesses have with their vendors improving or becoming even more profitable, maybe with contract management tools?
Yeah, well, hopefully I won't be unnecessarily duplicative, but I kind of go back to similar things I've talked about, that if you have something where it's easier to manage and to see the status of your agreement, right? And perhaps you have an executive sponsor for different agreements and they have access to that contract management system. It gives you so much more knowledge to know where you stand with your particular vendor. So, I think of things just like one thing I said previously, it could be time to renew. And that's a good time to go to your vendor and say, hey, we've got 3 other people that, I'm just saying, that they're willing to charge us less. Or, you might miss some things that your vendor is supposed to be doing for you, or reports that they should be sending to you. And if you don't have some way to manage that, it just gets lost. You just be surprised if you have 50 different executive sponsors or different people managing contracts in their own kind of area, and it's not together in one space where you can all see it and work together. Some of the issues that occur that you're simply not aware of. Again, I go back to the one that was from 1996. Having a compliance management system would have made someone would have noticed that, prior to that time. But one thing I wanted to say that I did for my teams when we did have a contract management system, or not for my teams, but for my clients. So the clients would be ops, etc. Is in the compliance management system, I would have one sheet that went in that gave the primary terms that I felt like were most important to them. For example, this is when it expires. This is when they are, the vendor is supposed to provide you reports. Here's, all the duties between the 2 parties was on a cover sheet that everyone could pull up in the contract management system. And I think that that's invaluable.
Yep. Totally. Yeah, just skips over so much just unnecessary, like, exchanges and just stress in general, which is even more important. So, we've so far talked mostly about, the relevance of contract management tools and, some other legal tech tools for businesses in how they manage themselves, how they manage their relationships with, the others that they do business with. I want to get your perspective a little bit, Tara, about how contract management and just legal tech in general, how is it useful for independent practitioners or consultants like yourself? Have you ever seen a client that has sort of come in and they ask you if you use any legal tech tools, or do you see legal tech tools giving you some sort of a competitive edge over maybe others?
Yeah, I do. I use, various some tools. I mean, I've not been in business that long, but but keeping, I'm in need of a contract management. But some of the other tools are, research tools that will give you more information. A dashboard that I use, that brings out my kind of daily metrics, but also about my customers, meaning this customer, I can look it up. I can look up one customer and say, for example, they need a compliance management system, or they have a compliance management system, but here's their issues. The more technology, when, back in the day, I mean, I won't say I was using paper files because I don't go that far back, but I would be pulling up just one file, each one, and maybe even in an email, trying to go back and ascertain what am I doing with this customer, even when I was in house. But it would be the same now, right? What am I doing with this customer, and those sort of things. And like I said, I've never worked at a law firm, so I do consulting, but I do know some lawyers that have solo practices, and the technology has been great for them as well, because the more technology they have, the more efficient they can be. They don't have many people on staff. Making sure they're not missing deadlines. And the only technology we used to have, where I would call it was more of a workflow. That's really all we had access to, right? So you could put in, we were sued on such and such date, and here's our deadline to respond, and that's about it. You couldn't follow trends or data. And so, it's so great that it's changing in the legal fields, for smaller firms, for consultants, for companies, and all around.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the past in this podcast, we've also talked about like the very infamous billable hour, and how that's been a little bit of a barrier, a huge barrier to implementation of legal tech. But what you're saying, I think, is very, very important. It's a very important point, because it's not just about billing as many hours as you can, because there are still deadlines that you have to meet, and especially for consultants who might not, or solo practitioners who don't have a huge staff, there still is a lot of value that legal tech tools can add. And as we're seeing this sort of culture change, and a lot of people are becoming more and more aware about legal tech tools. It's also interesting to see how maybe using legal tech tools versus not legal tech tools can also, sort of add to the credibility, or the overall, like, the overall competitiveness, of consultants or even law firms. Because, before the pandemic, lawyers just didn't think that, you could conduct court trials on Zoom, and with that was already happening in the pandemic. But the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, like, it made it very clear that you can, you can have Zoom testimonies, especially when it's Kate Moss and Elon Musk,
Right.
and even within law, that is changing a lot. People are realizing that you don't always have to, take all those flights just to, sign a paper, or to, just meet a client, and things like that. So it's a very exciting time to be working in legal tech. And you were talking about some of the tools that you had access to. I want to learn a little bit more about that from your perspective. What are some of the legal tech tools that are in existence today, pertaining to contracts or not, and could be something very general as well, that you're most excited about?
Yeah, so I'm really excited. And so I will say that I have a relationship with them, just a partnership and consulting. But I'm excited with Pravana, for example. But I'll explain which tools I'm talking about. So, particularly on the compliance management system required by the CFPB and financial services, kind of that arena. Because previously, when I put them together, you put your policies and you put your procedures together, but once again, you don't have one system where everything's tracking. So, compliance management system is huge, because you have, your fair lending piece of it, you have vendor management, you have all these things. And so Pravana and others who are providing a system where all that is linked, your legal complaints, your customer complaints, to be able to pull that and hopefully you never end up in an enforcement action or a regulatory agency coming at your door. But irrespective, you want to manage that. You want to check for any issues, read trends. But the most important part is that you remediate those, right? And you can show that you've done everything you can to remediate. And I think that that is what technology is helping it so much with, because you can look at the data, you can see where you have issues, and you can go and fix them.
Yep. Yeah. Always, the focus on, identifying problems and fixing them, which is like, like the whole point of, creating these efficient workflows. And which is why I think that, legal tech can just make such a big difference in the way that lawyers are, managing either their own practice or even in-house. Because I also grew up, watching my parents practice law, both of them attorneys as well. And I've seen them, do like due diligence, and then during my own legal education, I've been that intern doing circle ups when there's some sort of discovery or just an inquiry or something like that. So I just don't think any of that is necessary right now. And hearing what you're saying, it's very refreshing, and it's amazing to hear your perspective and have those thoughts validated as well. Our next question, this is something I ask everyone because this is just, I think, such an important topic, especially these days. But do you think we all know like mental health in the legal industry, it's not in an ideal place. It's no secret. How do you see legal tech tools being an ally for lawyers and also helping improve their mental health by hopefully reducing stress and all those in all those other areas? But curious to hear your perspective.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that question. I don't know if you followed me and my story, but anyway, I've certainly dealt with it myself. And so, again, um, the more resources that you have that can help you, a lot of times legal departments and compliance departments are small in comparison to the other business departments, because again, no matter how hard you try and how much you show, it's, we're still considered a cost center, right? And not a profit center. So, having the other tools that weren't available to me at the time, and when I was referring to this, the enforcement action I'm referring to went on for 4.5 years. I was working 60, 75 out literally, and I had a son, single mom. So, not trying to tell my story. My point is, I've told that already, but my point is that, lawyers, we have a significant higher incidence of substance abuse, mental health disorders, suicide ideations. And, I've never worked at a law firm, but I do believe that intense pressure of hours and billing hours and so much, I hope that we're coming around to the point to understand that people can't function that way and not well. And if we can add, technical ops and tools to our departments, that helps take some of that burden off people. When you have employees who have a better well-being mentally and physically, you're going to get higher profitability and better results, rather than working to the point where people just, the human body just can only take so much. So I'm so excited about how those two go hand in hand and the assistance that it would provide, both law firms and in-house attorneys. And I appreciate the question.
Thank you. And exactly as you said, businesses work better and can become even more profitable if their employees are able to, function at their 100%, both physically and mentally, because ultimately businesses are just people. And really appreciate you being so open and, sharing your story. I've been following that on LinkedIn as well, as it's just so nice to hear from other people and see this sort of open conversation. Really gives me personally a lot of hope for this shift in the culture within like the legal industry. And instead of making it sort of this thing about like bragging about staying up all night, now people are opening up about what the toll that it takes. So I really appreciate your answer and just the overall culture change around that.
Yeah,
and
I think that lawyers, we have to support one another and try to end the stigma and make it okay, to say those things. And that's why it wasn't easy, right? But that's why I decided. But it is a huge part of our, I'm going to do some speaking engagements, doing some CLEs and things. And so, but I do, and I'm so like what you say, I see this big shift of where, okay, at least we're recognizing it and how can we help one another. But I do believe that the tech tools are going to be a huge part of that.
Yeah,
Instead of me diving in, 10 million different documents, I could have pulled it all from a thing. That's a big deal.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. We've made a huge difference. It
Yes.
saved you so much stress.
Yeah.
But now we have those tools, and they're available. So, hopefully that doesn't ever have to happen again for many reasons. And Tara, my next question, it's very inspiring to see that you started your own consultancy, and you're very sort of open and very thoughtful post about what it took to start your own business, and all the fears and trepidations that go along with that, and the courage needed to just embark on this journey. It's very inspiring to me personally. So I want to get your advice a little bit for our listeners. If, some of them who are maybe contemplating career changes, some of them who are just maybe graduating, or those people that are in the middle of their career and maybe also thinking about starting their own business. What is your advice to them, especially in the in the legal tech space, or just like this modern transformation of law type of space?
Yeah, well, I think that this anyone who wants to start their own business or different careers, particularly the students that are coming out now and kind of I can say this, younger attorneys, and lawyers, they're so much more open to you all, and probably there was to me as well, but I just didn't see it. I thought, okay, this is the path, and I'm going to be the chief legal officer of a big billion-dollar, big company, and I'm going to ring the bell on the stock exchange. But then, I think we see in our world in general right now, probably maybe COVID precipitated some of it, as how do you define success and what does that mean to you? And I know that this sounds cliche, but what I would love for people to hear today is that if you have a law degree, you can do so many different things with it. But I can promise you that no money or job is more important than your happiness and your well-being. And I really mean to have a work-life balance, because for years we talked about work-life balance, but it didn't exist. And that was not true. You could be called, I would get calls at 10:30, 1:30 in the morning on a Sunday night, right? And so, I feel like with almost everything in life, if you feel this passion that you want to go and open something or do something different or have a career path, do it, just do it. And then the worst thing that can happen is you fail, but guess what? That was a great learning lesson as well, So that's what I would say. I would encourage people to really find what makes them happy and is good for them and their family, and then try it, and there's such a support system out there now, even on LinkedIn, and so many people are there to help. It's different. So it's the scariest thing I've ever done, but it's the best thing I've ever done. And so I just want people to know that you can do whatever you want to do. You are enough, and you are empowered to do what you feel like you want to, go chase your dreams. I know it sounds like what your mom told you your whole life, but I mean it. And I'm not doing like I was when I was, but I'm doing fine, and I'm happy, and I'm well, and that's most important.
Absolutely, could not agree more. And those are those are amazing words to conclude the podcast on. It's like you are enough, and there is a sea of opportunities out there. And just from my own perspective, I just think that the digital transformation of law, this movement in general, has opened even more opportunities for like young attorneys, like that are just graduating from law school. You don't have to just take the more traditional path. If you want to, do you. But if you don't want to, there's just so much out there that you can explore, and so much creative work that you can do. On that note, thank you so much, Tara. This has been a wonderful conversation. Really appreciated all your insights and the examples, the very, very clear and well explained examples you provided. I think the 1996 contract I'm going to remember that for forever. Like that's going to be my go-to example. I'm going to steal that from you.
It's been my pleasure. I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara. And thanks so much to our listeners for all the interest that you show in our work and in legal tech in general. We're here every Thursday with an episode of Rethinking Legal Ops. And thanks so much for following. And I'll see you next time. Follow Speed Legal and Speed Legal Tech for more content like this.